up and see who joins us.
Hello, Supervisor Hopkins. Okay.
All right, hi everybody. This is Evan Zelig. We just opened up the Zoom webinar, so I'm gonna wait till the attendees populate just a little bit for about 30 seconds or so before we begin today. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'd like to call to order the April 5th, 2021 Community Advisory Council meeting. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to first let everybody know that this is a little bit different today. We had to change our agenda around a little bit based on the Board of Supervisors meeting that occurred on March 16th. There was some good information that was discussed at that meeting, specifically relating to the implementation of Measure P as it relates to IOLERO and the CAC. And so we felt it would be a good idea to change our hearing around our monthly meeting so that we would have an opportunity to discuss this with members of our Board of Supervisors who are joining us today. First, I'd like to turn this over to our Vice Chair, Lorena Barrera, for the roll call for today's meeting.
Is everyone able to hear me?
You have a low
Perfect.
volume, but yes, we can hear you.
So I will take a roll. Councilmember Bailey,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez, Councilmember Estrada,
Here.
Councilmember Landaverde,
Present.
Councilmember Diaz Roman Diaz, sorry.
Here.
I'm Vice Chair Barrera and Chair Zelig.
Here, thank you. Okay, great. We are going to go over as well the agenda from the last meeting, which was March 1st, 2021. Are there any CAC comments about the agenda from March 1st, 2021? Does any member of our CAC have any comments about that before we approve those minutes? All right, I see no hands or digital hands raised on the Zoom app. I would then open up this topic to our public. If there are members of the public who wish to make public comment solely on the issue of the approval of the minutes from March 1st, 2021, if you could please raise your hand on the Zoom app and we'll see if we have any public comment regarding the approval of the agenda. Okay, I do not see any hands raised for public comment. So with that, I will turn it over. Is there a motion by a member of the CAC to approve the agenda minutes from March 1st, 2021?
I'll make a motion, Evan, to approve the March 1st minutes from the March 1st CAC meeting.
Thank you, Lorez. Is there a motion to second, or rather, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Jose Landaverde. Great. Then with that, I would ask for all those in favor of approval of the minutes from March 1st, 2021 to raise your hands and say aye. Aye.
And I'm abstaining since I was not present at the meeting.
Great. And all those opposed say nay or no. And are there any abstentions? Alma, you were also not present at the meeting, and Lorena and David. Okay. Then with that, I'm sorry? Okay. Then with that, the approval of March 1st, 2021 minutes can be entered into the record. Okay, now we're going to turn to our main discussion for the evening. And I do want to extend a welcome to the members of the Board of Supervisors who are present here. I do see Supervisor Corsi, Supervisor Hopkins, Supervisor Rabbit, and Supervisor Gore. Thank you all for joining us. The reason that we moved around our discussion for today is really relating to the March 16th meeting of the Board of Supervisors, where there was discussion about Measure P's enactment and how to implement the new guidelines and rather the new directives under the Measure P ordinance for IOLERO and the CAC at the present time. Looking at the Measure P ordinance, what I wanted to do is kind of go through it as it relates to the CAC and open the discussion with our members as well as the members of our Board of Supervisors as to how to make IOLERO and CAC the most effective that we can under Measure P as it was recently passed overwhelmingly by the voters. Initially, I note that the CAC is really referenced in two places in Measure P. First, it's referenced in section 2-394, subdivision 11, where it states that IOLERO shall staff and support monthly meetings of a community advisory council to serve as a bridge between law enforcement, IOLERO, and various communities of the county as set forth in the Measure P ordinance. It also indicates that while IOLERO shall provide staffing and support for the CAC, IOLERO and the CAC shall function, quote, as independent bodies working in a cooperative and collaborative manner, unquote. And I said that specifically because that's really what we're dealing with is in that sentence, IOLERO and the CAC shall function as independent bodies. It leaves a lot of room for discussion and interpretation. The second part that IOLERO that the CAC is mentioned is in section 2-397, which more specifically relates to the establishment of the Community Advisory Council. The purpose of the CAC is hereby established under Measure P to increase the visibility of the public into the delivery by the Sheriff Coroner of policing and corrections services and to provide community participation in the review and establishment of those policies, procedures, practices, training, and initiatives, and to engage the public to better understand the role of IOLERO and the Sheriff Coroner. It also talks about IOLERO CAC adhering to the NACOLE Code of Ethics, or NACOLE rather, Code of Ethics. Also in 2397, it talks about the Board of Supervisors appointing the CAC. And that does come into importance because of how we now have to look at our independence from IOLERO. We are now appointed by the board with one member appointed by Director Navarro. We are to function as an independent body working collaboratively, and IOLERO is to staff and support our meetings. Beyond that, however, we are to function independently. So I'd like to open it up initially to members of our CAC to ask what you as a council feel our independence should mean for the CAC. And then later on, what I'd like to do is, of course, talk about how AB 1185 may come into play with all of this. But before we get into that, I'd really like to open it up to our council with the Board of Supervisors here to talk about our independence from IOLERO and what you would like to do with that independence. What projects and what types of things would you like to see the CAC doing as an independent body from IOLERO? So I'd like to open that up at this time and ask if there's any members of our CAC who would like to address that initially.
I can start.
Great.
So as you all know, I spoke at the Board of Supervisors meeting on March 16th and basically mentioned what we kind of felt was important, which was what Evan just stated about the independence from IOLERO and how we're supposed to kind of do everything on our own now. And I had a little bit of confusion with the language that was in Measure P, because if we're using, in my mind, if we're using staff and funds that are designated to the Department of Iolero, but we're using it for the CAC. In a way, I would interpret that as depending on Iolero and not really being independent as Measure P stated we should be. So that was one of the things that really jumped out at me, because I think there should be some sort of clarification, and it's a little bit difficult to have that in the way that it's currently worded. And I think that any changes that need to be made to clarify that independence are not going to be made by us. But that's why I think it's important that we note that, because the voters approved this measure, and we need to make sure that we have some clarity moving forward on accomplishing our goals and our mission.
Thank you, Lorena. I would agree that for us to be independent as a CAC, it of course requires some funding for us to be able to do what is necessary as an independent body. Of course, Measure P does not set aside or earmark any budget for the CAC. It is only earmarked for Iolero based on the sheriff's budget. Now, one thing that needs to be considered is any money that we are spending as a CAC that is Iolero money, if that is what we are supposed to be spending, takes away from Iolero and whatever increase in budget Iolero was given. Overall, Measure P, the entire point of Measure P is to strengthen and make more effective civilian oversight in Sonoma County. And my concern is, if the CAC is to act as an independent body for the things that we want to do as a CAC, that we are taking away money from Iolero, which then affects its ability to be as effective as possible when it's, doing its auditing and doing its oversight. So, I would open it up to our members of the board who are here as to either any direction or comment regarding the funds for the CAC, and if there's any comment from our board about the independence for the CAC and using funds that are essentially earmarked for Iolero. Because usually, with other county commissions that are staffed by their, by their higher department, it's very possible that Iolero can simply staff us and support our meetings, and that's all the help we get. But if that's all we're getting, we need to know what we have to do with all of the other stuff we want to accomplish. Where are we paying for that? And how is that allowing us to be effective as a CAC? So I'd open it up if there's any members of our board who wish to offer comment on that. Yes, Supervisor Hopkins, I do see your hand raised. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just wanted to share that, the members of the board are really here today to listen to you and to sort of listen to your requests and hopefully take your feedback. I'm looking at our County Council Pittman, and we had a conversation earlier today surrounding the fact that we want to be really careful not to appear to take any actions or to really deliberate. So, we want to really maintain the listening role, hear your thoughts, hear your questions, hear your concerns, and then hopefully bring that back to a discussion at the board. So I apologize that it's a little bit awkward, but mostly we really want to be here to hear you and hear your thoughts and hear your desires and requests.
That's great. Thank you for clarifying that. I know, with the Brown Act, we certainly all have to be aware of those rules and regulations. So that's understandable. Okay, well, I guess I'll start it off. First and foremost, we need the Board of Supervisors to appoint the CAC. Right now with the CAC, we have 7 members who are working diligently as members of the CAC. We want to keep moving forward. We want to do as much as possible for the CAC. However, now that Measure P has been enacted, our hands are tied, because anything we want to do that may require the advice or counsel of county council, of the board, of other parties, requires that we have our board, our CAC appointed. For example, we did reach out to county council about an issue about AB 1185, whether it can apply, can't apply. We inquired whether there was a member of the county council assigned to the CAC who may be able to offer some guidance on that. an independent member besides Mr. Pittman, somebody who is specifically assigned to us for those questions. We can't have anybody assigned until the board appoints the CAC. So that would be step one that I would call on the board for at a future meeting very soon, to appoint the members of the board for the CAC moving forward. That is very important. Beyond that, is there anybody from the CAC now who wants to talk about perhaps any projects for either your ad hocs or any things that you want to see done that may require either budget or something else for independence from IOLERO? Jose, yes, I see your hand up, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Pittman, and everybody else that is on the call. So I am the liaison for communications, and just like everything, right now we're in a state of limbo for the fact that we don't know if we do have a budget, if our communication efforts should be interlinked or in any way with IOLERO. For example, when there's tabling events at a Cinco de Mayo event or anything coming up, do we have separate chairs? Do we have separate tents? Do we want that? Because my desire, really, I almost see the CAC is like casting a wider net into our community, a wider net for them to be informed about the services of the CAC, the role of the CAC, who the CAC is, and who IOLERO is as well. But I don't necessarily see, I almost see these paths parallel, but it's almost really that if the desire of the board is for us to be completely independent, then I guess it goes back to Evan's point, is that we would definitely need a budget. We would probably need a council. Do we make branding? Is branding and logos, is that going to be different? And also thinking about the community, that might just confuse people, you know, because I almost see this as it should be an two interdependent agencies that want the same goal. And right now we're just going to really give more resources, and in having someone like myself, you know, in the 3rd district, that I can speak Spanish and I can talk to the Latinx community, that I can talk to basically anybody, and I could say, look, there is an agency called IOLERO. This is what they do. This is what we do, and almost funnel certain things that we don't necessarily have capabilities to, like, well, we do have capabilities for subpoena, but do we really want to go there? I mean, because then that brings a whole list of legal issues, you know, going back to needing our own lawyers and our own counsel. So I would love, like the projects that I would love to get started would be maybe some short videos of seeing how is it that we serve the community, and put these on platforms like Nextdoor, Facebook, have our own social media page, maybe a quarterly newsletter that's separate from the IOLERO newsletter, but basically it's going to, a lot of ways, be interdependent with IOLERO. So those were some of my suggestions that I'm hopefully thinking. And another thing is that I thought it was very interesting that I don't want to necessarily always feel like we are attacking the sheriff's department. I want to see how we're collaborating and what successes have we done to date. I think that needs to be highlighted, because I think that it's not IOLERO and CAC are like we're policing IOLERO and IOLERO's policing CAC in a way, but it's almost, yes, we're holding each other accountable when bad apples are brought up to the surface. But at the same time, we do need to collaborate. So I would love to message all of that in my communications, but once again, I really don't know if this is going to be our own budget, if we're going to have some strategic way of having, maybe if it was earmarked $5,000 a year for something very minimal.
Thanks, Jose. And so, yeah, you know, for Jose, who's working with the, you know, the outreach and rather the in-reach and the communications, that for one of the purposes under Measure P to increase visibility for the public of what we do, that requires us to go out into the community. That requires us either to have as a CAC our own newsletter, our own tables, our own produced materials, separate from IOLERO, who's conducting audits and taking complaints. We want to hear from the community about other aspects that may not involve complaints about specific incidents or officers or auditing of issues like that. And so with that, we need to be able to have the necessary budget and support so that we can do that on our own without IOLERO, because IOLERO is now supposed to staff and support our meetings. But beyond that, the CAC under Measure P is supposed to be independent so that we can do what is called for under Measure P for our community, because we as the CAC are going to be the ears of our community for IOLERO and for the sheriff. And we're also going to be the voice and the mouth for our community to IOLERO and to the sheriff. And in order for us to do that, we need to make sure that we can hear our community in the most, be the most available as possible, listen to our community wherever they need us. And that will include being at events, sponsoring events, putting our name as the CAC out there so that we're not just hearing for the same community members every week, and so that we're able to really get out and get the most reach possible. And again, being independent can have a lot of different meanings. We can either be independent in all senses of the word, and which requires us to then have our own budget and be able to act independently, or we're only independent as for certain things, and really we're still tied to IOLERO. And so, for our Board of Supervisors, I think there does need to be some direction as to that, because again, every penny that we're going to spend as the CAC that isn't specifically ours is taking away from IOLERO, which affects their ability to effectively oversee and do oversight for the sheriff. We don't want to put ourselves against each other. The CAC is not to police IOLERO. It is not for us to audit IOLERO and investigate things that IOLERO is or is not doing. That's not what Measure P is giving to the CAC. Instead, we've been given power to act for and with our public. But in order for us to do that and remain independent, we need money to do it. Are there anybody else on our CAC who wants to talk about any projects moving forward that may require questions as to independence from IOLERO? Dora.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I interpret this.
Sure.
I interpret it as the main difference is that the Board of Supervisor gets to appoint the CAC members. I don't really see, and I don't think it would be beneficial for us to be completely independent. Because, for example, this weekend, Adriana and I attended an event, and both of us were talking to the community, and we were, so she would say something and then I would piggyback off her, and then she would piggyback off me. And that's how I think we would be most effective, because most of the CAC members here work full-time, have other obligations, and we really need to use our resources as best as possible. And I don't think having complete independence would allow us for that. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't have that background, so the subpoena power is kind of confusing to me, but I am involved in the community and I am connected to our community, and that's my strength. So I really do think that we just need to know legally what we're obligated to do. And if legally we're not obligated to become completely independent, such as having our own budget and doing our own thing on the side, then I really do wish that we would stay similar to what we are now, except that main difference of the Board of Supervisors appointing the CAC members.
Thank you, Dora. And, I agree, the independence of the CAC before Measure P was an advisory commission or council to IOLERO regarding a lot of the same things that we're now doing under Measure P. The problem is Measure P specifically said that IOLERO and the CAC shall function as independent bodies. So if we are not to function in that way, there needs to be some modification here of Measure P and some legal clarification. If we are to function as an independent body, then we need some legal guidance and guidance from our Board of Supervisors as to what that means to them, what they interpret that to be for this council, which is now appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Alma, I see your hand raised as well.
Hey, I agree with Dora. But it's really hard for us to really say something without having that legal, the legal interpretation of it before. My opinion would be like Dora's. I think that if we are totally independent, it will weaken us as a, it will weaken the cause. You know, just going back to why it was created and just thinking about Andy Lopez, I think it's really important that we stay united and we stay connected. I really don't think it would be wise for us to separate. And like Dora says, we're all busy, you know, we're parents, you know, some of us are parents. We work, we all have full-time jobs. And for us to use that subpoena power, we'd have to hire lawyers, more lawyers, you know, as a CAC and spend more money. So I think to me, we should be independent in the means that the Board of Supervisors is now appointing us. But I don't think we should be independent to the CAC because we are a liaison to the CAC. That is stated in Measure P. We are a liaison to the CAC. Okay.
Thank you, Alma.
Mhm.
Alma, just to clarify, we're a liaison to IOLERO is what.
I'm sorry, sorry.
No,
To IOLERO, not the
we're on the same
CAC.
So you're right. We are an advisory liaison council to CAC. And I guess that's where the confusion comes in is we've been working that way all along until Measure P passed, which changes things or doesn't. And that's what we need to find out. And I see Council Robert Pittman. He has his hands out. Mr. Pittman, please, if you could give us some guidance or direction on this issue.
I'll offer you some clarity. So,
Yeah.
so I apologize and thank you, Chair Zelig. Our interpretation of the ordinance is slightly different, but the ordinance itself has some ambiguities, which is what causes the confusion. So if you look at the plain language of the ordinance, and I'm reading from actually, I think it's the director's obligations where it talks about staffing the thing, the CAC, but while IOLERO shall provide staffing, the CAC, IOLERO, and CAC shall function as independent bodies, but you're supposed to work in a cooperative and collaborative manner. So I don't think this is intended to make you completely independent bodies where you're at loggerheads with each other. The example I would give you is our Permit Sonoma Department, which is our planning organization, has the Planning Commission, Planning Agency, and Board of Zoning Adjustments. They're a completely independent body from the staff that staff Permit Sonoma, but they still function under the same umbrella and they work together. There are the lesser legislative body from the board. The confusion that arose by creating you as an independent body was created by the passage of Assembly Bill 1185, which vests some powers into independent bodies that are beyond our discretion once we create the body. And that's the problem with the ordinance. I don't think that was the intent of the ordinance, but there is some ambiguity out there. The other problem or hurdle, which we've touched on, is the budget issue. And one of the cardinal rules of statutory interpretation is when a statute includes language in one place but not in another, the assumption is it's intentional when you look to the language of the statute, the plain language of the statute. They clearly provided for a budget for IOLERO, but they did not do anything correspondingly for CAC. My assumption is the intent was to create something more akin to how the Planning Commission Board of Zoning Adjustments operates, where you would have a allocation under the department's budget, but you wouldn't have an independent budget. That being said, I do believe my office's intention is to ultimately provide you with independent counsel just to avoid any conflicts and issues. We'll give you your own counsel, so you're not seeking counsel from the same attorney who's providing counsel to the department, just in case you do not see eye to eye on a particular issue. But that being said, I don't think the intention is to create a completely separate independent body that has its own functioning budget.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I understand certainly that is, that's the interpretation, and that is one way to look at this. And I think that's where some of the issues arise, is because the Measure P text, the plain language of the text, did create that separate independent function without the separate independent budget or the separate independent powers that go with it. And so briefly, I wanted to touch on 1185 because there is some confusion about AB 1185 and whether it does now apply to the CAC. Before Measure P was passed, everybody who talked about Measure P said that these are issues that very well may need to work out in the courts after Measure P is passed. And I think this is where we run into one of those issues. Here's my interpretation of AB 1185 and why it may apply to the CAC. Under 1185, AB 1185, it states that a county may create a sheriff's oversight board, either by action of the Board of Supervisors or through a vote of county residents. So first we look at whether that applies to the CAC. Under Measure P, which was now passed by the voters, the CAC has essentially been created as an independent functioning body for purposes of civilian sheriff oversight. Our purpose, if you read it, says that we are to provide community participation in the review and establishment of policies, procedures, practices, trainings, and initiatives. That's oversight. And so when I'm looking at the plain text of this language of AB 1185 and looking at Measure P, I see a board, the CAC, that has now been created by voters with an appointment by the Board of Supervisors for purposes of civilian sheriff oversight. Whether we want that power or not, we have to look at whether AB 1185 has given this power to us, because it can be interpreted in that way. The other way to interpret this is that Measure P did not create CAC as an oversight board, and it's only IOLERO that has that power. But again, I think there is some real debate that can be had as to that issue, and certainly both interpretations make sense. But again, I think this is an area where we need independent counsel to consult with to determine whether AB 1185 applies to us. Because if it does, then it opens up a whole other floodgate of necessary requirements, county counsel, conflicts counsel, if we are issuing subpoenas, the necessary counsel to fight when those subpoenas are sought to be quashed or vacated, and everything else that may go along with that. I also open it up to our members of our CAC on whether we want that independent subpoena power or whether that's something we want to leave up to IOLERO and keep it separate from us. But again, I think these are issues regarding a lot of clarification where it's needed, because this issue is a big one. We either have the power now to conduct our own investigations with subpoena powers, or we don't. It does say that we have to work cooperatively and collaboratively with IOLERO, but we're also a separate body created by Measure P. And so, Mr. Pittman, I know that County Council is going to address this at some point, but just so you know, that is a very big issue for this CAC and for the Board of Supervisors to address.
And through the chair, we don't disagree with your characterization of the ordinance. It was not drafted in such a way that it removes that ambiguity. And unfortunately, because you can give a reasonable interpretation to both arguments, it's impossible to add the clarification that some of your members have asked for without going back to the voters.
Okay. And that may be something that, I don't know how the board wants to deal with, but I think I speak for myself. And if there's anybody who does not want this to be addressed by the board, please let us know. But I think the board and county council, we need to address this issue because there are things that we can do as a CAC. There are subpoenas, there are investigations that we can do that are not tied to IOLERO. For example, if IOLERO, the department, decides not to review some complaint or reviews a complaint and determines that it does not warrant further investigation, if that is something that the CAC does not find satisfaction with, if we have the ability to do our own investigations, then we need to be able to do that, and we need to know that. Again, I would point out, though, our job is not to police IOLERO. It's not to investigate what IOLERO doesn't. But I do know that our community has topics that sometimes won't be addressed by IOLERO and may need the CAC as the voice of the community to investigate and to look into further. And certainly whether we have subpoena power or not will tell us how far those investigations and inquiries can go. Is there anybody else on the IOLERO, on the CAC who wishes to address these issues? Lorez, yes.
Thank you for everyone for all of their feedback, because it is unclear. And, first of all, I just want to say I'm really proud of the work that we've accomplished the last year, in particular with COVID. I'm just really proud of the work that continued. It wasn't how we visioned it, but I'm proud of it. But one of the things that we really have been doing, back to that serving as a bridge between law enforcement, layer, and the community and the county, is we're that other layer of transparency. Because if you look at an IOLERO, that to community can look like a system, right? Something that is big. And we really have been here to unpack a lot of that. But what I've really been in particular proud about, and that's what I would love to see continue. I don't know about that subpoena use and what that looks like, but what I can say is we have really been serving as a space to learn, to really learn. We've been looking at use of force, body worn cameras. We've been looking at all these things and been educating the community as we've learned. We've been educating our community at large about a lot of these issues. It is really hard to dig into them and try to make policy recommendations if you don't have a really good understanding of all these different levels of law enforcement. And it's like I said, I've been most proud about is we've been learning and doing this work. We've been teaching and informing the community. So anyway it goes, I think that bridge is important to really unpack and make this is such a wide, big subject area, especially if you have not a background in law enforcement, to really learn. So I don't know about that subpoena power. I don't know what that looks like. I know that in particular, that connecting to the community and being that transparency and helping communicate what's happening and communicating it in a way to the layman's terms of what's going on, because what's going to happen in particular as this moves forward, there's going to be even more eyes on the CAC in particular and IOLERO. And people are really going to be looking to see what is the CAC about. Before we got into starting to think about these changes and getting officially appointed, we were looking at our mission. We were looking about how we're going to look at the work going forward, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to move into the community. We really were doing that. And now we're kind of backwards because we've got to look at what is the CAC and what's that look like? And what is that going to look like going forward in light of all of this new information? So I would say back to what Evan is saying, that we really do need to get the appointments sooner than later, so that this foundational work of what is that going to look like going forward? How does that change? How do we honor the community? Because they're going to be really looking to us more than they ever have before to see what that looks like. And for example, like subpoena power, I don't know what that means, but I can imagine if the community heard us say, we don't want that power. We don't want to do that. We don't want to have that. They're going to be like, well, then maybe you're not the right people to be here. So I think that we need clarity about what that looks like going forward. And it's got to be out of the CAC, and the relationship with the IOLERO is critical. And I don't look at it as we don't talk, we're separate, because what IOLERO does is on such a deeper and significant level. We need that, but we need that constant communication. We learn, we don't know all of those things. And so being able to have those communications and that liaison is going to make whoever serves on the CAC stronger to push out into the community to make it understandable. Because I think one of the biggest things we get a lot of times from the community is like, well, why isn't this happening? And why haven't you done this? And why isn't this happening? And we're like, oh no, if you're going to be making really strong, impactful policy recommendations, then you need to do the learning and the education behind it. And continue that relationship with the sheriff's department so they can know that we're doing our due diligence. We're learning. We're not just angry, yelling, demanding. We're doing our due diligence. We're looking at other sheriff departments and other areas, and we're doing the work of putting forth really strongly, well investigated policy recommendations to the sheriff's department. So I just want to say, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm just really proud of what has been accomplished. But we are at a standstill. We had so much good work happening. And so if there's going to be changes, then that needs to be known so that can move ahead. And if it's going to be us, we need to know so that we can continue our work, because we're in a standstill right now. And this is really, really important work. And I'm just going to say it over and over again, the community is holding us accountable. They're watching what we're doing. They're going to be on us even more as we go forward. So there just needs to be clarity, because as whoever is on the CAC pushes out into the community, they need to have clarity, because if we start having lack of clarity, that's where we're going to have a lot of dissatisfaction in the community. And then it's going to look like we're not being transparent and we're not being truthful. And that is, I can speak, I'm sure, for all of us on CAC, we do not want that, because we've worked so hard to get to this point and show the community that we are doing our due diligence. So that's just my 10 cents. I don't know what that's going to exactly look like, but we need to be a liaison and connected to IOLERO, however that looks going forward. But there needs to be some clarification of probably what the CAC is going to be doing and what that work is going to look like going forward.
And yes, thank you, Lorez. The CAC is for the community. We are the voice of the community. We are the ones that the community contacts about what they want to see IOLERO doing. We are the voice of the community to IOLERO, and we are the voice back to the community when we're hearing back from the sheriff and IOLERO. So we definitely need that. We definitely need the collaborative and cooperation with IOLERO, which is in Measure P. And I guess from the Board of Supervisors, we need clarity as to independence, because we have been made independent under Measure P as a functioning body. And I guess we need some guidance from the board on what that independence envisions. I would also note for the members of our board, when you do talk about the CAC in the future, that the Board of Supervisors is authorized to strengthen an ordinance and to make changes to an ordinance to strengthen it. And I believe in this case, the board should review Measure P with the hopes of strengthening it and clarifying it such that the CAC has some direction on how far our independence goes. And more importantly, how we can work with IOLERO to accomplish our goals while also being functioning independently. And again, step one, I think we need our full board appointed, because we are on hold. We've done a lot of work in ad hocs. Those ad hocs have the members, our 7 members are in 3 different ad hocs. But once we get our 4 new members, the makeup of our CAC changes dramatically. And where we go with the next year and the next months in our recommendations to the sheriff of policy changes and recommendations on to IOLERO on what we want and what our community wants in policy changes, we're stuck until we have the members of our CAC appointed. Dora, I saw your hand up as well. Would you like to add something?
Well, I kind of wanted to add a little bit off of what Lorez was saying,
Please.
that we should not only be the voice, but we should be the community. So how the CAC's been working now, where she's explaining, we've been learning so much, and then that we take the community with us and learn with us. It's helped because we're not, you don't feel like you need to have all this complete, background on legal stuff, or just be like a expert on this. You're coming from all different backgrounds, and that will allow us to have different voices and different people on this CAC. So that's what I just wanted to say, what I took from Lorez saying.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other members of our CAC who want to add to this discussion about any projects or goals that you have specifically moving forward that the board may need to be aware of as it relates to our functioning independently and collaboratively at the same time? Okay, I see no hands. What I'd like to do at this point is open up this topic to the public. I'd like to take public comment on this issue and then bring it back for just some final words and to kind of leave it then with our board for consideration. But let's open it up to public comments. Members of the public are free to address the CAC. Public comment should now fall under the topic relating to the CAC independence from IOLERO and the implementation of Measure P. We are not opening it up to general public comment at this time, only on this issue. You will be limited to 3 minutes at this time. And I do see at this point one hand up. So if you would like to make public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand here on the participants for Zoom. And Lorena, I did see your hand go up and then go down. Before we open it up to public comment, did you have a comment as well?
Not necessarily. I was just seconding everything Lorez said and just asking for direction from the Board of Supervisors and County Council on exactly what their interpretation is going to be. But I think maybe we should hear from the community first and then continue with the discussion as you stated.
Great. Then yes, let's open it up for public comment on this issue. And the first person's name I see is Thomas Ellis. Once you are permitted to talk, please go ahead. We will set the timer for 3 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and CAC members. Thank you for hosting this Zoom meeting, and with IOLERO, this is a really interesting time. If you think of the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And I would only say, and again, deeply thank you for taking on this role. I apologize for being the first person to speak. It just came to my mind that one thing to think about in terms of your role might be to consider what would your role be right now if what happened in Washington at the Capitol happened here. And I don't know how that could happen. I just mean that if there was some strange thing that happened politically of one side of an insurrection, maybe Portland, I don't know. If that lived here, I don't even know what happened in Portland to be specific. But my point is what role would CAC have, and how would it explain to the community, and how would it deal with, say, the Capitol Police and what General Honore is saying versus what the union representative is saying about the Capitol Police. And in other words, how would these roles interleave with one another and speak to these various issues, because we are in this challenging time, and I think there obviously there are levels upon levels of that. I'm talking about Black Lives Matters and each of these different types of levels of things, and those are the things I think to consider with this broad role but very important role. And I want to leave it there because I want to keep it very short, that this is very important, and it probably can't be determined in a very short period of time. And I also wanted to thank the Council Pittman in offering to have a separate council. I think that's really important, and I deeply appreciate that aspect. And I'll say thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person whose hand is up is Susan Lamont. Susan, once you're allowed in to the main room, please go ahead and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that we should have a very, very public CAC member recruitment. Most of the time, the public has no idea what's going on with the Board of Supervisors. They hear nothing. It's, you know, something on a website. It needs to be much more than that. And also, everybody's talking as though you guys are all going to be on it still. And yet I don't read it that way. That wouldn't be independence to me. As for the budget, we've already had Ms. Navarro talk about the extra money she has. She's trying to figure out what to do with it. It's much more than you would need. So I don't see that you would be hampering IOLARO by getting a little bit of that money. Also, Alma is the only person I've seen on this screen who has actually been to a good CAC meeting, which actively involves the public. No such thing has existed for the past 2 years. The public was included in everything. The work is discussed publicly at the meetings. People get to comment on it. There is no ignorance. I was kind of insulted by Lorez Bailey's comment that we don't just shout. The public was active with the CAC members in doing the research. There was a considerable amount of research done. You guys have not done more than the other CAC did. So I think this things have been misrepresented. I'm sorry none of you was ever at an actual well-run meeting. And is this some kind of a unique idea, this cooperation? Certainly there must be cooperation in this county between offices. Now, under Jerry Threet, the way it was run, the CAC acted independently. There is a model for this. They were independent. They turned to Mr. Threet for advice. He didn't tell them what to do. They asked when they didn't understand something, when they wanted some information, and that's how it worked. They were independent enough that when recommendations were made to the sheriff's office, sometimes the CAC did not agree with Jerry, and Jerry didn't agree with them. And they're two separate recommendations would be issued. The CAC would make its recommendation to the sheriff's office, and Mr. Threet would make his. There was no acrimony about it. This implied as though somehow there's going to be this adversarial thing doesn't make any sense to me.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That was the 3 minutes. We do appreciate, of course, all the comments, Susan. The next person that we have for public comment on this issue is Wendy Cole. Wendy, once you're unmuted, I think you'll be able to give
Yeah,
it. Yep, great.
Thank you, Evan. I have great respect for IOLARO and the CAC, and I've been following meetings for quite some time. I think what you're doing is so important and well done. Every meeting is so chock full of information. But I feel I must have missed something. I mean, while I see many reasons for clarifying any bill or any measure, I don't see a point in a discussion about an overlap in government functions. And when it's to serve a certain amount of 100,000 people. But I do see a real reason for a budget so that the CAC can get out its information and I guess run seminars or groups. I'm a member of the political organizing committee of the Democratic Party, and our mission is to educate the public. And without a budget, it would be very hard, not a huge budget, but it would be very hard to do a lot of the things that we do, attend a lot of the events that are out there, and conduct our own when it's important, when nobody else is doing it. So thank you. And thank you, everybody on this call.
Thank you very much, Wendy. The next person for public comment, Lee Vandeveer. Lee?
Hi, I just, well, first of all, I want to say I do look forward to a much more robust community outreach with plain language accessible to many people with many different communication styles, in addition to people from oppressed communities who often have work that prevents them from attending meetings. And so, yes, there's always a few of us who are able to do this, but yeah, the vast majority of the public would also like to be present. So I look forward to that. I would like to say that from my understanding about Measure P is that the IOLERO is obligated to staff and support the CAC. The independence, in my understanding, shifts the appointment from the director to the supervisors. And that is my understanding of what this independence is. And then other than that, I understand a robust working relationship between the CAC and the IOLERO, but funding from the IOLERO and independence, meaning the Board of Supervisors appoints. So that's what I understand. And again, I look forward to a very robust future where we have all kinds of meetings at all kinds of times in all kinds of locations. I appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I don't see any additional public comment. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, let's go to Alcina Horstman. Alcina Horstman.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Alcina, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you and all of your time. I've been coming to these meetings for a long time, and I know we have the COVID issues that really threw everyone for a loop, but at the same time, for me, it's frustrating to see a lot of time on mission statements when the purpose is clearly outlined. I'm wondering how much of the prior CAC meetings, how much research has been read by the current folks on the panels. I agree with most of what Susan Lamont said about public vetting for the next folks coming onto the panel. The funding seems really obvious. I agree with what the prior caller said, that it seems that IOLERO is supposed to oversee that function. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I know that the makeup is going to change, but in a very long time, we haven't seen any real policy recommendations. And yes, there is a lot of education to do. I've been learning a lot in the last 2 years coming to all of these meetings. They're very tiring. It's a lot to do. And I know all of you are learning in the background. But, the last CAC was making policy recommendations regularly. And despite COVID, we really haven't seen any of that out of all of these ad hoc meetings, even with all of the activities happening on a larger national scale. So I would really like to agree with everything said before about a robust public involvement and also some real action happening, some concrete action. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you. We do have Kathleen Finnegan who would like to give public comment on this issue.
Well, good evening to everybody. I'm very grateful to be here having this conversation, especially with the supervisors present. I think that we are at a crossroads here for what can be a marvelous opportunity to truly expand our need for public outreach, for more stringent audit because of the subpoena power given to the director. I think, however, what I'm seeing seems to me to be some sort of inflation of issues that really aren't there. It seems to me clearly that, again, I'm not an attorney, and heaven knows, I have nothing valid to say when it comes to legalities here, but it seems to me that ILRO will be the functioning umbrella that will staff and fund CAC activities, not just meetings, but other activities. CAC has always been outreach, 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 and that seems to be unchanged. Thank heavens, I think it can be more robust. And the director when her new attorneys will be responsible for audits. As far as I can tell, there is absolutely nowhere, any place in any of the measures of provisions that I have read that indicates that the CAC should be given subpoena power. Absolutely, I think that's a figment of somebody's imagination. And again, I'm fully aware that I could be all wrong on this, but I think that the question of independence has to do with the CAC ability to do its own work and without undue influence from the director, that the CAC is going to be focusing on public opinion, bringing that back to the sheriff's office, back to the director, and making those decisions on their own and not having to serve or be not having to serve as the voice of the director. I think that things are really quite clear. I don't think it needs to be as complicated as we are possibly making it. But I do think that the subpoena issue should be probably pretty easy for county council to determine. And I think that will make a big difference as far as defining what CAC's parameters will be. And I wish you all good luck. We're with you on all of this work. It's important, and we are going to be continuing to support this as members of the public. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, we're going to take one more public comment from the last hand I see before bringing it back. This is Alan Worstel. I apologize if I pronounced the last name incorrectly. Alan Worstel.
Hi, my name's actually Allegra Wilson. Alan's my husband.
Okay, great.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo what I think most of the previous callers have said. My understanding is similar to Lee's, that this should all be like independent bodies, that ILRO and CAC should be separated. And I also just wanted to speak a little bit to the opportunities for the public to be a part of the CAC for public recruitment. Our public so clearly needs a voice in these law enforcement matters, and I do feel similarly as one of those people who's attended a bunch of times. Maybe you're getting tired of hearing from us, but I hope not. And I think that we're here because there are issues that really strongly need to be addressed, and it's frustrating to the community to see only education, not policy making, not policy recommendations, especially in a time of such maybe miscommunication is the word I'll use for right now between the community and the sheriff's office. It's unfortunate that we don't have more accessibility, and I think that would also be a really, really big piece of the puzzle to get these meetings to be. I like that it's on Zoom. That's one big, great thing. But the more people we get, the more people we can get, the better. And we need a voice, and that voice is the CAC. So thank you for what you're doing. And I hope that we see that public participation in a really positive light. Have a great night.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, I want to bring our discussion back to the CAC now. Are there any follow-up comments or anything else that anybody would like to add based on what we just heard? Lorena, yes.
So from the comments and from everything that was said, I can see now what was mentioned about the independence in, I guess, appointment of the CAC members and what the community intended. What I think we need overall is just something in writing from County Council and the Board of Supervisors stating that clarity, so that way we know how to move forward in addressing things like AB 1185 and things like that. Because if there's still some sort of confusion in the air because of the words independent and things like that, I just think we need to be able to justify how we are defining it and how we're going to be moving forward, even if we aren't on the CAC anymore. I also want to say that a lot of the things that we bring up, we aren't, if we ever had a disagreement with the director, it does get pointed out. A lot of this, we read it and share our opinions. It's not that we're being told what to say or anything like that. So actually the way I read Assembly Bill 1185 was the establishment of an advisory board, and I kind of do it in like a timeline kind of way. And that was passed before Measure P was passed by the voters or approved by the voters. So I would see it as us being a body that does have that subpoena power, but if that's not how we're going to interpret it, that's fine. I just think we need to have something that states that, but we aren't bringing up things because someone's telling us to. These are our own interpretations. And if we ever have a disagreement, it does get brought up. And we did want to have this discussion with the Board of Supervisors present and to hear from the community so that we're all kind of on the same page, asking for public comment, asking for input, and just putting all our ideas out there so we could come to a final conclusion as to how we're going to move forward. And that's all I ask. I just think we just need some clear direction from the Board of Supervisors and something from County Council.
Yeah, thank you, Lorena. I agree. You know, the AB 1185 issue is not an issue that Director Navarro brought up for us to discuss. It was an issue that arose because 1185 was passed. And then when we get Measure P with its language, we have to then look at 1185 and wonder how those two affect each other and how we as a CAC are impacted by 1185. Does it give us that subpoena power that is discussed in the code section? That's not something that Director Navarro brought to our attention or wanted us to discuss. That's something that affects us as the CAC based on the implementation of Measure P. Similarly, you know, there was a public comment regarding, you know, that the CAC right now is working and acting as if we will remain on the CAC. That is absolutely correct. We have no other way to work at this point because we are still appointed to the CAC. And until the board either reappoints us with additional members or reappoints the entire CAC, we have to still act as the CAC for our community and do what we have been doing this entire time. I will also state that what we have been doing through our ad hocs is very much the work of making policy recommendations and doing the research to make those recommendations. We've had a team of amazing interns from Sonoma State University who for the past year have been working with us researching use of force in the 58 counties of California. And the reason we've been researching other counties' use of force policies is to find out where Sonoma County differs from other counties and what other counties have implemented that Sonoma hasn't that we feel should be implemented here. So we are looking at other counties. We are looking at making policy recommendations. We have been doing a lot of work in the background through our ad hocs. That work has been done with our community input, with emails we receive, with our Sonoma State interns, and with the input of the other CAC members. So I do want to let our public know, even with COVID and everything that has changed with how we do our meetings, the work and the research is still being done on the back end. And we do have a set schedule for our ad hocs on when we would like to get policy recommendations out to the sheriff for the work that we've been doing. Now, we've been paused a lot in that work because we've had incidents arrive, like the murder of George Floyd. We've had incidents arise like civil unrest within our own community with members of the sheriff's and Santa Rosa Police Department and other agencies involved. We've paused so that after those events, we could listen to our community, listen to the feelings of our community, the anger of our community, and listen to what we then need to do with the voice of our community for additional policy changes. So even though these events have come up and have changed some of our research, it is still very much happening. And our goal has never been anything different than listening to our community to make effective policy change recommendations to our sheriff. It has not changed, and that is still our purpose under Measure P, is to listen to our community, make ourselves more visible, and make ourselves, I guess you could say, louder within our community so that they know that they're being heard and so that the voice of the community is being communicated effectively to Iolero and the sheriff. Okay, I did see, Alma, that you had your hand up as well with some additional comments.
Just, you know, I just want to thank the public for all the comments that they made. And I did want to, I guess, being on this committee the second time around, I understand things a lot more, but to learn everything, you don't learn it overnight. And it's really, maybe in the future, when we leave, there could be an overlap of a couple of months where certain things can be ongoing. I don't know if it's possible, but I think 2 years is a short time compared to everything that you have to learn. Unless you've worked in law enforcement, unless you're maybe an attorney, it's all very new. And there's a lot of learning that you have to do, a lot of listening also to the community. And so kind of like bridging those gaps, you know, it's a little bit hard sometimes, and it does take a little bit of time. And also, I'd like to just, you know, like, again, thank the community for all their input and everything, and all their comments. And then also just go back to the Evelyn Cheatham ordinance and to what was the intent? What was the intent? Because there's the you know, letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. And so what was the intent originally of that ordinance? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose, I see your hand up as well.
Thank you, Evan. I just wanted to echo what both you and Alma said. And I did hear it a couple of times about the CAC recruitments when there is a vacancy, that yes, it is very, I believe there are internal boards within the county, but part of the communications plan that I would propose is that anytime there's a vacancy, just start putting that in newsletters, start putting that in our platforms, whether it be Facebook or whatever it is that we utilize. And, you know, and just one final thing, the reason I joined this committee and I actually did see it, Iolero actually had posted it up on Facebook and I was following them and I've submitted my application. I just don't want to see any more parks in memorandum of a child that was murdered or anything like that. I think that goes, all of us don't want to see that. I don't care what side of the spectrum you are at. And we have to take a long view on this. We want to make data-driven recommendations, not just jump on because we're in high emotion because something happened in Chicago and DC or whatever. We have to also be we have to have a pulse of our own community and understand that there are other things around that affect us. But I would just urge for your patience. And yes, I may not be in the CAC, you know, a month from now or whenever the appointments are made. But I would just encourage whoever it is that's going to replace me. I would love to just give my communications plan proposal, and then obviously they will have my support as a community member going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're going to end this discussion and go to our public comment generally. But before we do, I do want to thank our Board of Supervisor members for joining us today. Thank you to Robert Pittman from County Council, Brandon Cutting, of course, from the Sheriff's Department. I think I do see Supervisor Corsi actually with a hand up. I would please go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay, please.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for the work that you do. Appreciate you changing your schedule to allow us to be here and observe and listen to your discussion about this. And I want to tell you that I have heard what you've all said. You know, the need for clarification is very palpable here. I don't know whether that clarification is going to come from the Board of Supervisors, from the courts, from the voters, but I hear that it's needed. The one thing that I think that we can provide you, and I will commit to provide you ASAP, is getting these appointments made and giving some advice from the board about budget and where that's going to come from, whether it's going to be separate or part of ILARO. But really, I just want to say thanks and good work, everybody.
Thank you. And yeah, I think for the CAC, that's really what we are hoping the Board of Supervisors will do is, number one, make the appointments as soon as you can, but we all want there to be a very diverse, we want the CAC to look like what it's intended to look like under Measure P, represent the diversity and demographics of our county in the best possible way. And so we do need the appointment to be made soon, but of course, once there are proper qualified applicants who can be appointed. With that, yes, direction and some guidance on budget would be very helpful. As well as, again, because I know it's an issue that has presented itself from County Council, perhaps some guidance on or a legal opinion as to the applicability of 1185 to the CAC, because there are different interpretations of that, both from lawyers and non-lawyers. It is very open to interpretation based on the creation of Measure P and 1185. Okay. With that, if there's nothing else from either members of our board or members of our CAC, I would now like to open up our discussion to public comment generally. This is for public comment for items not appearing on the agenda, but within the subject matter of the CAC. When given the opportunity, please state your name and who you represent, if applicable. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes at the discretion of the chairs, based on the number of comments and other factors. I would encourage all to review the commitment to civil engagement that we have in our agenda, and encourage all people giving public comment to assure that your comments are respectful and follow our commitments to civil engagement, as well as our designed team alliance. Okay, I'd like to open up to public comment now. And I'll give it a few seconds here to see if there is anybody who wishes to make public comment, again, on either this topic or any matter within the subject jurisdiction of the CAC. The first hand I see up is Susan Lamont. And Susan, we're going to go ahead and time everybody for 3 minutes. Go ahead whenever you're available.
Okay. This piggybacks on other stuff that I've said, but it goes back to a past meeting in which we talked about people's being able to comment and how slow it was for you to finally allow people to comment, the public to comment on each item that was discussed. And, you know, it was, first it was you could comment for 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting when nothing had actually happened yet. And then it was you can comment once for 3 minutes at the very end. And then gradually you opened it up after lots and lots of complaints. And the response I got the last time I mentioned this was, well, we're doing what the law makes us do. There were a couple of you that said this. And the thing I take first from that is, if there were no law, we wouldn't give you anything. That's how I interpret that. But I would like to point out that, as I've said over and over again, the public under Jerry Threet was able to comment about anything that was discussed. You could interrupt, interrupt by raising your hand, to discuss a point that was being discussed, to give information, to ask for information. It was a real discussion. And so I'd like to point out to you Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution of California, which says that statutes, court rules, and other authorities shall be broadly construed if it furthers the people's right to access. And I would say that the Brown Act in Sonoma County is observed strictly. And that is not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says, give the people as much access as you possibly can. And, I don't see it happening here. It's gotten better, but it doesn't really mean a true conversation, which is what we used to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. The next person for public comment, Barbara Grisecki.
Hi, thanks everyone for having this evening tonight, and especially for the Board of Supervisors for taking the time. I was a member of the Measure P group that worked on getting Measure P enacted, part of the campaign that did that. And just wanted to express my own learning curve. And I wanted to echo what a lot of the other CAC members were saying about the challenge. If you're not an attorney and you've never been in law enforcement, understanding all of the nuances involved, it's not a simple process. So I would just want to go back a little bit to some of the comment I made at the Board of Supervisors meeting regarding the CAC, which is that kind of time and investment is something that I feel needs a stipend. We want a broad and reflective aspect of the community, and we need to acknowledge and respect the time commitment that is out there. The other piece of that time commitment is really being a great spokesperson and input for the community. And, I'm hoping that through Measure P that we see that role even strengthened as the CAC gets broader. Because I would like to know, as someone in the community, if I have an issue with a policy of the sheriff, I have a place to go and I know that I'll be heard. And that's really why I was such a proponent of Measure P. So those are my comments, and thanks again, everyone.
Thank you for your comments very much. Thomas Els.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Thomas.
Again, I want to thank the CAC members for the work, and I know what the previous CAC members did. They did enormous amounts of work. It is a challenge, however you come to this, because each detail demands a great deal of commitment, and I want to thank you. Something I'm not sure that I understand very well about this is the interaction between the CAC and the sheriff vis-a-vis its role in the county over the cities and the city police departments. Now, I want to reference that to the period of time when I earned my MBA in public administration. And I was studying in Oakland, in downtown Oakland, and in the county building. and many county members were there, and I was able to study with Captain Jackson of the Alameda County Sheriff's Department, and there were Oakland City Police there as well. There's a certain amount of animosity between the two, and it was pointed out that the sheriff has, or could certainly have, authority over the police departments under certain circumstances. And we know here, whether it's the coroner or whether it's an investigation that the sheriff does over the police departments or for the police departments in the case of incidents, what role does CAC have in overseeing the sheriff's department and its determinations as to a police department's use of force? In other words, it's not the sheriff's department, or it's a death within the city, whether at the hands of the police department or in another circumstance. What do you see as the CAC's role with regard to oversight of the sheriff and its determinations within the city? And I would consider that in the broader role as the constitutional role of the sheriff. So, and I don't know how you would answer that or whether you should answer it now, but I would just think of that in the broader sense as I was speaking before. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so everybody does know, unfortunately, with this public comment, we are not permitted to give answers or to engage in discussion, only to listen to the public comment for consideration later on. Okay, the next person on the list is Jerry Threet. Jerry, go ahead and speak whenever you are permitted to do so on the app.
Thank you. First, I wanted to speak to you with my hat on as the chair of the Human Rights Commission of Sonoma County. At the last meeting of the Human Rights Commission, the commissioners voted and passed unanimously a resolution calling on all local law enforcement leaders to investigate employees of their agencies to assure the public that there are no employees that may have white supremacist affiliations or racist ideologies that could be exhibited through things like text or tattoos or social media postings. And the commission, I'll be following up on behalf of the commission with letters to law enforcement leaders that I'll copy you on for the one for the sheriff. But I think that might be a fruitful topic for you to explore with the sheriff's office in the future as to how they might handle that type of investigation, not going into individual investigations, but just how it might be handled and whether they will be following up on it. And then, you know, taking that head off, I just wanted to speak to an issue that was brought up about the challenges and the difficulties on the subject matter, which can be quite detailed and at a level sometimes of expertise that, you know, folks won't be familiar with when they enter the role that you're charged with. And so I just wanted to offer that there are several, you know, ways that you can get really valuable training. And hopefully the sheriff's office is offering CAC members training as they did in the past. That's really valuable training just to learn how they look at different things like use of force investigations and other matters like that. And also, you know, if the sheriff's office sponsored folks, you could probably attend post trainings. You'd likely have to pay for it. But those trainings also can be very valuable, particularly things like internal affairs, investigative training, and critical incident investigation training, things like that, to learn how it's done from the inside, so you have an insider view. And then, of course, there's the NACOL training. And I highly recommend the NACOL trainings, which are very valuable, and would even recommend that those of you who have the time seek a certified practitioner of oversight certificate, which shows a certain level of expertise in the area. So just wanted to offer those comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Kathleen Finnegan. Kathleen Finnegan, go ahead with your public comment whenever you are given the opportunity on the app.
Okay, I barely got my hand up there and you're right on it. So again, I am no attorney, but somebody just had who was it? Was it this body had some trainings on the Brown Act, and I got the impression And I'm sorry that Mr. Pittman has left us, but I got the impression that as far as public comment and a response or no response from the body to which the comment is addressed, my understanding is that the panel or the committee is not required to answer, but is not prohibited from answering. So we can look into that. I just thought I'd bring it up as a point of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. If there is no additional public comments, and at this time I see none, I would like to thank everybody for attending tonight's CAC meeting. Thank you especially to those who have joined us from the Board of Supervisors this evening. We definitely appreciate you being here to listen to both our comments as well as that of the public, in hopes that we will have some clarification soon on membership of the CAC, as well as budget and clarification on the issue of independence. And so thank you to County Council, to Lieutenant Cutting, to our interns who have been able to join us, Director Navarro, and to the members of our CAC and staff. And we will adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting is going to be Monday, May 3rd, 2021, and that will be our monthly May meeting, where our topic will be, let me open that up. Actually, we had to move some stuff around. Our topic will be the CAHOOTS model, essentially community-oriented policing, and discussing what that might look like in the future if it is implemented here in Sonoma County, and learning more about that method of policing. Okay, thank you, everybody. I do see Director Navarro.
Evan, I'm so sorry, but I got a message from a community member who says she had her hand up and wasn't called on. I beg your pardon. Her name's Delashay Carmona Benson.
Oh, absolutely. Let me see. I do not see Delashay on as an attendee. I don't see anybody's hand raised or trying to get in. If somebody else sees that and can let Delashay in for public comment, that would be great. I don't see her on either as an attendee or trying to get in for comment.
Sorry, Evan, I'm looking. I don't see her either, but she sent me a message and said she's had her hand up and has been waiting to speak, and no one called on her. So I don't see her here, but she asked me to.
Do you see her on as an attendee in our Zoom?
No, I do not. So I can't let her in to speak unless she's as an attendee, and I don't see it. Is it under a different name, perhaps?
Okay.
We certainly want to give the opportunity for comment if there is any. I'm at a loss. I don't see her on as an attendee or anybody with their hand raised, so I'm not sure how we can do that.
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to give her a minute to see if she clarifies, but I apologize for interrupting. I just
No, that's okay. If there's people from the public who have not been heard, certainly we want that opportunity.
Okay, she said she's left. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Delashay, if you're still listening to the meeting, please either email your comments to the CAC. We do all get the emails, and or feel free to call us, and certainly email whatever we can do to have your comments heard. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I will adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting is May 3rd, 2021. Again, thank you to all of those who attended. Thank you. Bye, everybody.